Le sujet aujourd'hui sera un gros focus sur la thématique donc, du CCAM, en anglais Connected, Cooperative and Automated Mobility. Nous avons le plaisir d'accueillir aujourd'hui parmi nous 3 personnes, 3 policy officers de la Commission européenne, avec Susanna Krak, avec Tom Alkim et Lutke Rogge, qui vont nous présenter non seulement le sujet, le contenu du programme de travail, mais également un peu plus les enjeux, prendre un peu de hauteur, entre guillemets, sur la thématique du CCAM, et nous expliquer les enjeux, etc., derrière cette thématique. Quelques règles, vous avez l'habitude. Jean-Marc, si tu passes la slide suivante, s'il te plaît. Donc, vos micros seront coupés, le webinaire sera enregistré. Vous allez avoir accès au replay d'ici quelques jours sur notre site officiel qui est indiqué sur la planche que vous voyez actuellement à l'écran, donc sur le site du ministère Messerie, Horizon Europe gouvernement.fr. Donc, caméra coupée. N'hésitez pas à poser vos questions dès la première présentation en direct par le chat et c'est moi-même qui vais les transmettre oralement aux intervenants. Les présentations des 2 intervenants de la Commission européenne vont être anglais. Libre à vous de poser vos questions en anglais ou en français. Merci. Jean-Marc, tu prends la suite, s'il te plaît? Et moi, je prends la salle d'attente.
Très bien, bonjour à tous. Vous êtes nombreux aujourd'hui et nous vous remercions en fait de votre participation à ce webinaire sur la thématique CCAM. Donc, comme Thilo l'a dit, nous allons commencer le webinaire en français juste pour une brève introduction à Horizon Europe et au Cluster 5. Et ensuite, nous passerons à la présentation de nos collègues de la Commission sur ces appels à projets CCAM. Donc vous avez ici l'agenda. Nous garderons une session à la fin de l'événement pour répondre, je l'espère, à toutes vos questions que vous pourriez avoir sur ces transparents. Donc très rapidement, en 5 petites minutes, quelques informations sur Horizon Europe et sur le cluster 5, tout d'abord pour ceux pour qui en fait ce nouveau programme ne serait pas encore très bien connu. Vous retrouvez en fait sur cette première planche une vue très générale en fait du programme Horizon Europe. Je ne vais pas tout vous détailler aujourd'hui, c'est une illustration que vous avez peut-être déjà vue dans des présentations qui ont été faites notamment lors du lancement en France du programme Horizon Europe. Donc une présentation, une journée de présentation même que vous pourrez redécouvrir avec le lien que vous avez en bas de ce slide. Donc vous retrouverez toutes les informations utiles concernant le lancement d'Horizon Europe en France et également un ensemble de replays, de webinaires qui ont été organisés à cette occasion, donc sur les thématiques techniques, disons, mais aussi sur des sujets plus transverses comme les aspects juridiques et financiers associés à Horizon Europe. Alors, en ce qui nous concerne aujourd'hui, nous allons nous focaliser sur le pilier 2. Donc vous avez 3 piliers dans Horizon Europe. Le pilier 1, Excellent Science, qui est plutôt dédié, pour faire court, à de la recherche fondamentale. Le 3e pilier, à l'autre extrémité, Innovative Europe, qui est plutôt lié à l'innovation, disons, à la mise sur le marché de produits innovants. Et puis le pilier 2, dans lequel vous retrouverez un ensemble de ce qui est appelé donc des clusters, et notamment le cluster numéro 5, climat, énergie, mobilité. Donc le périmètre du PCN transport, il est bien là au travers de cet item mobilité dans le cluster 5 du pilier 2. Il s'agit d'un cluster pour lequel vous voyez le budget, donc les budgets qui sont affichés ici en rouge correspondent à la période 2021-2027, donc on a un budget ici de l'ordre de 15 milliards d'euros, sans ventilation officielle à l'échelle du cluster, donc entre les 3 thématiques. Même si en termes d'ordre de grandeur, vous pouvez retenir que les thématiques mobilité et énergie sont à peu près équivalentes et prépondérantes par rapport à la thématique climat, prépondérantes en termes de budget. Au sein de chaque cluster, en fait, vous retrouverez ce que nous appelons des destinations, en fait, qui sont des des thématiques macroscopiques au sein de chaque cluster. Donc dans le cluster 5, vous avez 6 destinations. Donc, alors ce slide, c'est déjà l'occasion pour moi de vous rappeler que les destinations 1 à 4 sont couvertes par le PCN climat-énergie et que le PCN transport s'occupe des destinations 5 et 6 que vous voyez sur la droite.
Et en
Avec
partie
des
la 2 aussi.
Et en partie la 2 pour l'item batterie, effectivement. Donc vous voyez que pour la période 2021-2022, les budgets pour ces destinations 5 et 6 sont de l'ordre de 500 et 400 millions d'euros. Donc la destination 5, pardon, j'ai oublié de le préciser, concerne les modes de transport, disons, zéro émission. Donc c'est du transport routier zéro émission, du transport aérien, du transport maritime et fluvial. Et puis il y a aussi une sous-thématique qui est plutôt liée à l'impact des transports sur la santé humaine et sur l'environnement. Et dans la destination 6, vous retrouverez en fait une sous-thématique sécurité et résilience, transport multimodal, et celle qui nous intéresse aujourd'hui, qui est la thématique du véhicule autonome et connecté. Donc un deuxième lien sur ce slide qui vous renverra vers le programme de travail 2021-2022, dans lequel vous trouverez l'ensemble des appels à projets pour ces 6 destinations du cluster 5. Pour vous donner un peu plus de détails, vous retrouvez sur ce slide en fait le découpage budgétaire entre destinations, toujours pour 2021-2022. Donc vous retrouvez les 511 millions d'euros pour la destination 5 en orange sur la gauche et 380 millions d'euros sur la destination 6. Alors pour vous donner un point de repère, les appels CCAM 2022 représentent un budget de l'ordre de 88 millions d'euros si ma mémoire est bonne sur les 380 qui sont affichés ici. Et vous retrouvez sur la droite, alors non seulement un découpage budgétaire des différentes destinations, mais aussi un découpage en termes de type d'action attendu. Donc essentiellement pour les destinations 5 et 6, des RIA, des actions de recherche et d'innovation, ou des IA, des actions d'innovation. Alors je vois qu'on a quelques micros qui sont ouverts, si vous pouviez tous veiller à les couper, s'il vous plaît. Et juste un dernier slide pour faire la transition avec la présentation de la thématique CCAM. Ici, vous pouvez voir apparaître en fait les différentes destinations du cluster 5 en couleur, avec la destination 6 qui est tout en bas, sur laquelle vous retrouvez les 3 thématiques safety, sécurité, alors MSTS pour le transport multimodal et la thématique CCAM. Vous pouvez voir en fait sur ce transparent que cette thématique CCAM, elle est alimentée directement par le partenariat coprogrammé CCAM Connected, Cooperative and Automated Mobility. Donc on n'a pas prévu aujourd'hui de vous refaire une présentation des différents types de partenariats, mais là vous voyez qu'il y a différents partenariats coprogrammés notamment qui reversent directement les appels à projets dans le cadre du programme Horizon Europe. Donc c'est le cas de la thématique CCAM, en fait, qui est associé à un partenariat coprogrammé, justement, CCAM, qui propose 11 sujets dans les programmes 2021-2022. Il y en a eu 6 en 2021, il y en aura 5 en 2022 pour un budget total de l'ordre de 162 millions d'euros. Et donc c'est sur cette partie-là que nous allons nous focaliser aujourd'hui avec 2 intervenants, parce que je crois que Susanna ne nous a pas rejoint, mais 2 intervenants de la commission à qui je vais passer la parole. Donc nous allons passer en anglais pour la suite de la présentation. Avant de passer à la suite, je vous rappelle que vous pouvez indiquer vos questions à tout moment dans le chat Teams du webinaire et que nous les traiterons en fin de présentation. Ludger, Tom, you can now switch to English. I do not know who is going to start the presentation.
Oui, moi je vais commencer, mais
Okay.
je me permets juste de vous introduire, de me présenter en français. Je m'appelle Ludger Rogge, je travaille pour la DG Recherche à Bruxelles et je vais présenter les topics avec mon collègue Tom Alkim. If you allow, I will continue in English. Is that okay?
Coupez vos micros, s'il vous plaît.
Okay, good. So welcome to this information session.
Je sais qu'elle vient de t'appeler et elle veut partir.
Okay. Welcome to this information session. Before we start talking about the different topics, let me just give you a brief overview of maybe the policy framework on connected, cooperative and automated mobility at the Commission. If you give me the first slide, please. So we at the Commission, we believe that CCAM has enormous opportunities to make our mobility safer and more efficient. And that's why we have already since 2018, where we have launched the communication on automated mobility, the main aim to accelerate the deployment of CCAM systems for passengers and for goods. But in order to fully exploit the potential of CCAM, we have to make sure that automated mobility is fully embedded in a transport system that favors social inclusion, low emission, and overall efficiency. So as you can see here, our vision is to develop automated vehicles that foster and support new mobility concepts, shifting away the design and the development from a driver-centered approach to a more mobility user-oriented approach. So that means that we do not want to push for automated mobility to have more cars on our roads and in our cities, but we want to push for automated mobility that provides viable alternatives for private vehicle ownership, while also increasing the efficiency of the transport system and the inclusiveness. So the next slide, please. There you see how we want to achieve this objective. So we use a couple of different categories of policies there. The first one is setting the right legal and policy framework. So we are working with colleagues from other DGs on adapting the legal and policy framework in different areas like safety, like the revised general safety regulation, or on liability, cybersecurity, but also data protection and access to data, but also connectivity and ITS is very important. So for example, we are currently working, so colleagues from DG Move, they are working on the revision of the ITS directive, because we believe, of course, CITS and ITS infrastructure are strong enablers for highly automated mobility. So, and that's why we do the revision of the ITS directive and the delegated regulations on real-time traffic information and multimodal travel information services. Now, the second area that you can see here is more related to soft issues, addressing societal and ethical aspects linked to automated mobility. So, for example, we support actions to assess the impacts and benefits and costs of these vehicles on our roads. And we are also looking at the ethical aspects related to automated driving. So, for example, last year we have published an expert report giving 20 recommendations to different stakeholder groups on how to include ethical considerations in the development of automated vehicles. And now, next week, we are also organizing a stakeholder, an expert workshop on how to organize a follow-up of this report and the recommendations. And thirdly, investment and research and innovation, and I'm going to talk about this now later on. Next slide, please. So automated mobility plays also an important role in the Sustainable and Smart Mobility Strategy, which was published in December last year. So this is a strategy, you might have heard of it already, which will set the path to achieve a 90% reduction in transport-related greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. And this strategy identifies more than 80 policy measures that are structured in around 10 different flagship action areas. And one of these flagships deals with connected and automated mobility. And there it sets out, so the strategy sets out measures to achieve the target of having automated mobility deployed, widely deployed at a large scale by 2030. And one important policy measure also of this strategy is the support of research and innovation. So, and in the new framework program that we have just started, Horizon Europe, automated mobility plays really an important role and a priority. And for the whole duration of Horizon Europe, so which starts this year and goes up to 2027. We expect to dedicate 500 million euros of public funding for implementing research and innovation projects. Next slide, please. So this amount, these 500 million euros, will be spent on research and innovation priorities defined by the new European partnership. And Jean-Marc has already mentioned the partnership. So this is a partnership which is a public-private partnership between a huge number of different stakeholders, universities, but also industry, car manufacturers, suppliers, and so on, and the European Commission. And it aims to better align research and innovation efforts across Europe and to develop also a common and implement a long-term research and innovation agenda. So in addition to this 500 million that I was talking about, this public funding money, the private partners also of the partnership will also invest at least another 500 million euros in R&I activities, which means that, well, for this framework program in the partnership, we expect investments of at least 1 billion euro now through the partnership. On the next slide, please. So this partnership has, as I said, developed a first long-term R&I agenda for Europe. And you see here the different clusters. So that is basically the content. So this research agenda has defined a multi-annual roadmap for 7 research and innovation areas, or they call it.
Lutger, you went to mute.
Yes.
Somehow.
Okay. So there is a first cluster on vehicle technologies, focusing on the development of safe and reliable technologies on board of the automated vehicle to perceive the environment and also take decisions and enable a safe and smooth interaction between the automated vehicles, the users, and the infrastructure. Another cluster is on validation. So there we look for work on procedures, methodologies, and also tools which are needed for validating the safety of CCAM systems. Another cluster looks at the integration of CCAM vehicles in the overall transport system. There you find research priorities to advance physical and digital infrastructure support, and also connectivity and cooperation between actors, between the vehicles. Another priority is on key enabling technologies, including AI, big data, and cybersecurity developments, which are also essential to enable the operation of highly automated vehicles. And then the research here in this agenda does not only address technology development, but it also looks at societal aspects and user needs of automated vehicles. That is in cluster 6. And then maybe the most important cluster is cluster 1, which you can also see here in the center of the diagram, where all the the results of the other clusters will be integrated in large-scale demonstration projects. And then finally, there is one cluster, cluster 7, about coordination. So there they have included activities to better coordinate the large-scale demos, the research projects, to organize exchange of experiences and best practices and so on. So now I'm coming to the calls. Next slide, please. So Jean-Marc has already mentioned, so this year we publish 2 calls. Well, the first has already closed. In total, we have 162 million euros in these calls. So the first call just finished yesterday. I hope that many of you were also involved in the first call. And the second call that we are talking about now has just opened last week and with a deadline on the 12th of January. And here on this slide, you see, that's why I explained the R&I agenda a little bit more in detail. So you see on the left-hand side, you see the clusters that I just mentioned, and on the right-hand side, you see the topics that are open. So that means we fully take into account the agenda of the partnership, and all the preparation of the topics has been done in very close cooperation with the partnership. So next slide, please. So this slide gives you now an overview of topics that are currently open. Tom and I, we would like to guide you through the 5 topics that are currently open. We make a very brief presentation, and of course we are open to any kinds of questions that we have in that time frame. But of course, if you have any questions that go beyond the time of this seminar, of course, we are also happy to help you out after that in case you might have further questions. Maybe before we start with the presentation of the topics, one mention on international cooperation. If you give me the next slide, please. Yes, there is one slide on international cooperation. You might have seen that also already in the topic descriptions. We put a strong emphasis on international cooperation for all the 11 topics, and also for these 5 topics that are open. So we really strongly want to encourage all proposals to look out for possibilities to cooperate with projects or partners from the countries that you see here, the 6 countries, US, Japan, Korea, Singapore, Canada, and Australia. I mean, the reasons you see there, I think that we have many good reasons to support international cooperation. We want to exploit synergies, and also in the longer term, we think that it can be very useful also towards global frameworks and international standards for connectivity and automation. So that is maybe as an introduction. I don't know if there are questions now, otherwise we continue.
No questions in the chat. Please continue.
Okay. So I will start with the first topic. The first topic is on large-scale demonstration projects. If you maybe go to the next slide. So, as I mentioned, the new European partnership puts a particular focus on large-scale demonstrations because they are fundamental to increase the maturity and safety of technologies, and to better assess the potential impacts and also the acceptance by the users. So the partnership that I mentioned before plans 30 or even more demonstration sites for people and mobility, for freight and logistics with explicit results by 2030. And now this topic, with a budget of 50 million euros, is the most important and also the biggest as far as the budget is concerned. So with this budget, we want to finance 2 large-scale demonstration projects which shall demonstrate shared, automated mobility solutions for people and for goods in real traffic conditions. So the proposal should take into account the work already of previous and ongoing projects. So we have plenty of them ongoing already in Horizon 2020, like the Avenue project you might have heard of, or the Show project. And of course, the projects that we're looking for, they should build upon the experiences and
oui, mais c'est le principe X par professionnel, ouais.
Coupez vos micros.
Okay. And of course, they should be more ambitious in terms of involving more mature technologies, and also testing automated driving systems in additional and in more complex use cases in extended operational design domains. And Furthermore, also these large-scale demos should demonstrate innovative cross-sector business models. So it is essential that the proposals should make sure that there is a wide range of stakeholders involved to make these tests a success. So the proposals should include, for example, cities, infrastructure operators, also if it's for people, public transport operators, or if it's for automatic logistics operations, you should include the logistics service providers and also civil society organizations. So a broad range of stakeholders should be included. And in addition, a project should also include a comprehensive assessment of all impacts of the tested solutions to be able to show to what extent these projects, these systems can reduce to reduced carbon footprint, or also to reduce congestion and more reliable and predictive travel times, but also, of course, to increase safety and security. Very important to mention is that these vehicles that are tested should all use zero emission technologies. That is clearly mentioned all in the core text. So maybe the next slide. Here you just get an overview of the type of action. So it's an innovation action. It should go up to technology readiness level 7. You get an overview again of the budget that we have dedicated to this topic. So we are, as I mentioned before, we are looking for 2 projects here, both of a size of 20 to 25 million euros. And as I mentioned before, international cooperation is very important for us. So that was the first topic. Tom, will you go on then?
Yes, I can continue. First of all, thank you all for inviting us today to give us the opportunity to give a little bit more information on the calls. I'm a colleague of Ludger Rogge, and unfortunately our third colleague, Susanne Kraak, was not able to join us today, but the 2 of us will try to explain everything to you and answer your questions. So Ludger, very good that you started with maybe what we think of the most important ones, the large-scale demonstrations. Last week in Hamburg was the ITS World Conference. I don't know if you all went there, but maybe some of you were there. And I recall I was there the whole week. One of the highlights was the various demonstrations. So L3 Pilot, one of the flagship projects of the Horizon 2020 program, was there with quite a lot of vehicles demonstrating their capabilities on public roads. So many attendants could try this. And I think the overall takeaway from that is that we have come a long way, but we are not there yet. So there is quite some progress in especially vehicle capabilities, but actually operating flawlessly in mixed traffic in the real world, that's quite a challenge. And I don't think we will get there in one step. So we will need a couple of iterations, so to say. So vehicle technologies is one part of this. Therefore, we have also opened this call topic on reliable occupant protection technologies and HMI solutions to ensure the safety of highly automated vehicles. If you can go to the next slide, we will see a little bit more detail here. Of course, you can also find all the information online. It's published in the portal. But basically here there are 2 elements. You will see that in the future you can have new, let's say, new vehicles and new configurations. So we may have to rethink occupant protection systems. I mean, safety is paramount. So that is one part of this call. this topic. And the other one is still increasing the human-machine interface solutions. Of course, you can imagine that it's really important that that people know what to do in automated vehicles, especially in the ones that are not completely automated from beginning to start. You will see a lot of transitions of control and a lot of use cases where you can only drive a part of your journey automated. And therefore, it's paramount that you can switch, let's say, on and off safely. So on the scope, you see that the vehicle crashworthiness needs to be developed. Especially taking into account new seating arrangements. Empathic HMI solutions. So here we think that it is important in the future also to kind of predict and look at human emotions of the drivers to help anticipate on whether they are able and capable to take over. So this is related to the transitions of control, and you can see that also in the fourth bullet, where it is mentioned that seamless transitions of controls are necessary. So, of course, the overall goal in the end would be to have an unlimited operational design domain, but it will take a long time before we get there. And until we get there, we will have a lot of gaps there. And so there is a high importance of doing these transitions of controls safely and swiftly. So we also put the user-centric approach in the center, so to say, and eventually assessment tools would also be very useful to develop this, because this is in a sense uncharted territory. So that has to be defined as well. We can go to the next slide. And here you see a little bit on the available budget, 8 million. We expect one project to be funded. And also here we encourage international cooperation. Of course, there are also cultural differences in the approach, especially looking to the HMI. So we think it's worthwhile to have international cooperation here, and also the inclusion of social sciences and humanities. That's it for this one. We can go to the next slide, and I think, Lutger, you were taking this one.
Okay, thank you, Tom. So the third one, the third topic we would like to present is also in the area of validation. And this is about developing a human behavioral model. So what do we mean by that? It's a model that should look at the performance of human drivers in many different driving situations. In order to be able to validate the CCAM systems, we have to be able to assess the performance of CCAM systems compared to the human driver. But for that, in order to be able to do that, we need a much better understanding of the human driving performance. And this better understanding can be achieved through a human behavioral model, which we are now looking at, and which should replicate the full performance of spectrum of human drivers. And this model can be used as a reference for assessing the performance of CCAM systems in reducing the number of fatalities and crashes. So, as you know, we are still missing a lot of information on the precise performance of humans in many different driving situations that might be critical for automated driving systems. Human behavior depends on a huge number of different factors like gender, cultural or ethnic background, or also aging, or the driving experience of drivers, of users. So data on all those factors have an impact on the human driving behavior. And this data is only partly available from previous research. but it is not sufficiently broken down to a level of specific driving situations. And also available software modules to simulate human driving behavior only cover specific aspects of human driving performance so far and do not cover the full spectrum of drivers. So that's why we are now working on this behavior model. So on the scope of this topic, so the proposal should develop a robust, scalable reference model on human driving behavior, with also the potential to cover all relevant aspects of human driving performance, as well as the broad spectrum of drivers and influencing factors. So this model should be used as a reference for the automotive industry and its R&I partners to design human-like and therefore also easily predictable and acceptable behavior of automated driving functions in mixed traffic. So that this means that this model can be very useful for the definition and verification of required safety levels of CCAM systems. So linked to the human behavioral model, the proposers should also develop a methodology to extract consistent data on human driving performance from different data sources like real traffic simulator, real traffic or simulator tests, and also collect this data. And proposals should calibrate the parameters of the model with the help of this data and develop a corresponding validation concept based on real-world experiments. So this model should be validated at least for selected fields of application with the perspective of extending the fields of application gradually over time and also simulating human behavior in future scenarios of mixed traffic. It's also important that this topic looks at ethical issues as tests with humans need to be carried out and their personal data will have to be captured. So next slide, please. Then you can see also the details of this topic. It's a research and innovation action going up to technology readiness level 4, and we are looking for one project to be funded with a budget of up to 8 million euros. So that was topic number 3. Let's go to topic number 4. Tom?
Yes, I'll take this one. So integrating CCAM in fleet and traffic management systems. Important element. We can go to the next slide. Because as Ludger pointed out in one of the first slides, I mean, we will not reap the benefits of automated driving unless we fulfill all the conditions, and all the conditions are in terms of the technology that works, the legal framework that allows it on the road, users that are willing to use it and trust it, but it also has to be integrated in the current mobility system, also taking into account the current infrastructure. Because we cannot design a complete new mobility system from scratch, disregarding everything that we already have now. So mixed traffic will be a reality for quite a long time. And granted, a lot of road operators currently have a lot of experience in managing fleets, normal fleets, human-operated fleets, and do traffic management with dynamic traffic management measures. But this is all not taking into account automated parts of it. So doing traffic management for automated vehicles will be different in essence, because what we do now is we give information to humans that operate vehicles, In the future, we may have to give information to algorithms that operate vehicles, and that is probably not just an exercise in translating it, because humans are very good at deciphering the context in which they are driving, and they can handle, let's say, rules or information that is ambiguous. If you direct it to algorithms or to systems, you have to be very explicit and precise. And I think this is, again, it's rather uncharted territory to develop this. So in this call, we look at concepts for fleet and traffic management to achieve this desirable integration in the entire mobility system, and also taking into account mixed traffic. And regarding the scope, proposal should address all the following aspects that are being mentioned here. So this concept should be developed and demonstrated, preferably also in practice, but also taking into account business cases for fleet operation. We have seen in the past that quite a lot of concepts have been developed to demonstrate that something is possible, but one step further is that it is viable in an operational setting, taking into account all the real-world demands of having goods delivered in time, or the way people use these services. The technology gaps have to be addressed to do this. Communication is also an essential part of it. And well, the traffic efficiency is also a part of the equation. Currently with human-driven traffic, especially under normal conditions, you see a pretty good load of networks. If you start doing traffic management for partially automated vehicles, you may get different outcomes, and you probably have to rethink the approach. So that is something that needs to be done here as well. We also look at intermodal interfaces and interoperability between different traffic management systems. So it's not only let's say vehicles that are owned by individuals, but there's also a public transport component here, and the shared component. And with simulation models and tools, we can, of course, you can get a better understanding on how to scale up, because you need to develop various strategies. You cannot all try them out in practice. So simulation is a very good tool to help you develop those traffic management strategies and assess the effects. And in the end, well, effective cooperation and governance models are, of course, also needed, because you need to have it work in practice. And yeah, the governance is an essential part of it. We can go now to the next slide for a couple of the details. So this is an innovation action with 10 million euro available, and we expect 2 projects to be funded here. And again, international cooperation is advised, and the inclusion of the social sciences and humanities. And with that, and also looking at the time, I give the floor back to my colleague Ludger for the next one.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Well, I'm going to present now the 5th and the last topic of this call 2022. Which deals with artificial intelligence. So this belongs to the cluster on key enabling technologies, and artificial intelligence is definitely one of the key enabling technologies because it has a huge potential to improve the performance and the safety of our highly automated vehicles, in particular in difficult and complex and dense traffic environments. And artificial intelligence helps to improve the process of decision-making of automated vehicles based on robust and reliable detection and perception. So proposed projects here under this topic shall help to better understand the capabilities, the limitations, and also the potential conflicts of artificial intelligence-based systems for automated mobility. So under this topic, we are looking for concepts, techniques, and models based on AI for CCAM applications, in particular for situational awareness, prediction, decision-making, and triggering of actions of automated vehicles. AI concepts should also be developed for cyber threat detection and mitigation. And all actions under this topic should also have the aim to increase user acceptance from an early stage based on explainable, trustworthy, and human-centric AI. So interactions with vehicles using AI should be, of course, understandable, human-like, and reflect human psychological capabilities, and should be free of gender, ethnic, or other biases. Now, on the scope of this topic, so the proposed actions are expected to address the following aspects. First of all, as I said, these topics should develop and integrate AI concepts, techniques, and models for CCAM, which are explainable, trustworthy, and human-centric and unbiased. And these concepts can be developed on level of the vehicle or on the level of the transport system, where tactical and strategic links to traffic management and traffic conditions need to be established. Proposals must work on AI training for CCAM, enabled by a relevant set of real and synthetic traffic events and scenarios. And they should also work on approaches for the validation of AI-based and AI-supported functions. Proposals should build upon existing and generated data for training and verification of AI, supporting situational awareness in CCAM in more complex traffic scenarios. And another important point which should be addressed by the projects are ethical approaches for data handling and of increasing amount of data. So if we go now to the last slide here, you see all the details again. Here we are looking again for research and innovation actions up to TRL 5, and we want to fund 2 projects with a total budget of 12 million euros. So this brings us to the end of the presentation of the 5 topics that are open. Now let's see if you have received some questions.
Yes, in particular yourself, for Lütke, because we have a couple of questions regarding the very first topic, 0101. I tried to translate them because Tom might also want to contribute. First of all, the very first question was regarding off-road sites. Any vehicles working on construction sites, roadworks, or even in closed environments like airports, the mining sector, or warehouses? Is there anything specific related to this kind of, let's say, vehicles, engines?
Well, I mean, as long as all the conditions are fulfilled, as I just mentioned, so it has to be ambitious in terms of involving mature technologies, and it also is tested in real traffic conditions. Yes, also this is possible to do that, but it's really focusing on a shared mobility solutions for people and goods. So I would say yes. Tom, what is your viewpoint?
Well, I mean, maybe to a smaller extent. I think this is currently addressed in the award project as well. So as you know, award is one of the last Horizon 2020 funded projects, which looks at, let's say, overcoming the complexities of the operational design domain under harsh weather conditions and in some more secluded areas. So I would say it is also kind of addressed there. And if you go off-road and in secluded areas, you are not really dealing with, let's say, real traffic conditions with other participants. So it could be part of the overall proposal, but I don't think it should be a main component.
Yes, it's not the focus of this topic. That's true.
Okay, thank you. So another question related to the first topic. Regarding freighters, demonstrators in the freight sector, which is the TRL, the expected TRL at the end of the project? And is there anything, are there any specific expectations, or is it similar to the demonstrator for passengers? Is there anything specific that has to be taken into account when treating issues related to the freight sector compared to the passenger sector?
Well, no. I mean, the question on the TRL is already replied by our slide. I mean, this is an innovation action, and it should go up at the end of the project up to TRL 7. That means demonstration in an operational environment. So this is what we would expect also from demonstrators in the freight side.
Okay.
Tom, you would like to add something on the other question?
No, I think that's, I have nothing to add to that.
Mm-hmm.
The third one, again, is the first topic. You have mentioned different components regarding impact. Is the number of vehicles, is the minimum number of vehicles expected? Or the distance for the pilots? Is there anything specific on that?
Well, there are no minimum numbers foreseen. There is no requirement. Otherwise, we would have mentioned that on neither on the number of vehicles nor on the number of test sites that should be used in the demo project. But the test should include a series of vehicles which should allow to collect sufficient data to test the performance of the technologies in real traffic conditions, and also to be able to test the user behavior and expectations. I don't think that you can do that with a handful of vehicles. But it's also important that you do not only look at the number of vehicles, it's also to look at the duration of the demonstrations and the size of the ODDs, or the operational design domains, and also at the type of drivers. I mean, just to give you an impression of the L3 pilot project, and maybe Tom can help me with that. I think they were aiming of testing up to 100 vehicles. I think that was the aim. I don't know if they managed in the end to have really 100 vehicles on the streets tested.
No.
Maybe this is a little bit less. So maybe this gives you more or less the kind of numbers that we are talking about. Maybe, Tom, you know a little bit more how many vehicles they have tested. And just the L3 pilot project was a project with a funding of 36 million euros, so slightly higher than the budget that we are looking for. So several tens of vehicles, I think that is something that we should look at.
Yeah, maybe I can comment a little bit on that. So regarding L3 pilot, the aim was 1,000 persons and 100 vehicles in 10 countries. Somewhere along the road, they decided that they could do it with 75 vehicles, because you don't only look at the number of vehicles, but it's a combination of the number of people that you have in the vehicles and the numbers of miles that you would drive. So they calculated that with, let's say, 75% of the vehicles, they could still do all the miles that they promised. And this was kind of agreed. And then, okay, the COVID pandemic hit. So in the end, they were also not able to meet the total number of miles. But of course, this was due to a very unusual external condition. But here, I think you're right, Ludger. We look for critical mass and substantial numbers, and it is a combination of, let's say, different vehicles, people, and the actual miles or kilometers that you drive in challenging conditions. And we don't put any minimum numbers there, but we assume that you know, a well-balanced consortium will come up with, you know, a convincing and ambitious targets to demonstrate the purpose of the call.
Okay, thank you, Tom, Ludger.
Yeah.
There's another question which is not fully clear to me, so I have asked for more information. I have a question from my side. I will get back to this question, of course, but
well, I think the question, yeah, I think the question is whether you can, yes, join a consortium which is already has already started. Or I guess
a project it has already started.
Ah, yeah, okay. That is going to be difficult. Not as a partner, of course, because there is a consortium which will then sign the contract, but there are always possibilities in many projects. They have also the possibilities to yes, to share the experiences, and maybe some cities are also looking for follower cities where they do not know yet at the beginning of the project where they are going to make all the demos, and maybe there is a possibility also to join later. But I don't, yeah.
Well, yes, the question I have from my side is regarding the international cooperation. The text says advised. Well, you have to be careful. Does it mean strongly advised, strongly recommended? So whenever you don't have an international partner, you basically have no chance to get accepted, or is it just a quite kind of loose recommendation?
It's a loose recommendation. It will not impact on the evaluation. So it's a recommendation. It would be, I mean, be an advantage. You have to show that it's also an advantage, and it can help also to increase the impact. Then it's another criterion. But it's not really an eligibility or a criterion that you have to fulfill to be successful. Okay, that's not the case. It's a recommendation.
And the degree of cooperation, do you have to have ideally partners in the consortium, or you just indicate potential partners without having them as a
Yes, I mean, partner? we have in the past, we have done this already in Horizon 2020. We have different experiences there. I mean, they could become a partner, that is possible. Then we have to see if they are also able to get some funding in the countries that we have mentioned. That is not possible. They have to look out for their own funding. But they can become partners. Or you just, within the work packages, you can organize with these partners, I don't know, the organization that they work on specific tasks within the project. And you could also think about, yes, organizing common workshops, for example, exchange of experiences, exchange of data, or exchange of staff even. So all these possibilities are within the scope. So that is really up to the proposers to decide the most appropriate way. So they don't have to become an official member of the consortium. There are other ways to do that.
Okay, thank you. There's a more generic question about your slides. Can they be sent to the participants? Do you want to modify them? No?
No, they can. They are available.
Okay, thank you. Bon, je vois qu'il est midi 02. Est-ce qu'il y a d'autres questions
plus de questions
posées via le chat? Ouais. Je vois plus de questions, mais pas à la minute près non plus. Si, si quelqu'un veut s'exprimer, n'hésitez pas.
peut-être en attendant une dernière question, Thilo. So we can switch back to French for the last slide and waiting for some final questions, perhaps.
Okay.
Donc, juste un dernier slide pour vous rappeler quelques informations utiles. En fait, donc ça n'a pas été mentionné là directement, mais l'enregistrement de ce webinaire ainsi que les slides seront mis à disposition sur le site Horizon Europe, qui est rattaché au ministère de l'Enseignement supérieur, de la Recherche et de l'Innovation. Donc tous les participants ainsi que les personnes inscrites à notre liste de diffusion seront informés dès que ce sera effectif. Nous vous avions déjà annoncé en fait l'organisation d'un second webinaire thématique sur la thématique du transport maritime et fluvial. Donc celui-ci aura lieu le 30 novembre 2021, toujours en fin de matinée, avec encore une fois le support de la Commission européenne comme aujourd'hui. Donc les replays, de manière générale, sont tous disponibles sur le site Horizon Europe du MESRI. Donc vous retrouverez un ensemble de liens ici sur ce slide pour le lancement du programme Horizon Europe, mais aussi pour les actualités, et notamment un lien qui pourrait vous intéresser concernant les ressources juridiques et financières. Si vous avez des questions qui dépassent le cadre technique, disons, du transport, vous retrouverez un ensemble d'informations très utiles en fait sur le mini-site du PCN juridique et financier. Et toute dernière information, donc l'adresse mail générique pcntransport@recherche.gouv.fr. Si vous avez des questions sur ce webinaire, si vous avez des questions autres sur la thématique transport dans le cadre de Horizon Europe, et si vous souhaitez vous inscrire à notre liste de diffusion pour rester informé des événements de ce type que nous pourrions organiser dans l'avenir ou des autres événements auxquels nous pourrions participer prochainement, je l'espère aussi en présentiel. Voilà, donc je ne sais pas si du coup on a récupéré une dernière question.
Non, c'est plus des détails sur la question qui a été posée. Et je pense que Luc avait aussi la réponse. Donc ça concerne le projet qui a déjà démarré, par exemple sur Paris avec une navette autonome du bois de Vincennes. Si vous montez un nouveau consortium, vous pouvez bien sûr le resoumettre à cet appel à projet actuellement ouvert.
Donc je vois que Pierre a aussi envoyé une réponse. Merci Pierre.
Oui. Voilà, oui, très bien.
Ok, très bien. Bah, écoute, je pense que...
Il n'y a pas d'autres questions? N'hésitez pas. Bon,
non.
très bien. Merci.
Okay.
Thank you both to Ludka and Tom.
Merci beaucoup
Maybe.
pour nous donner la possibilité de présenter les topics de 2022. Donc, si vous avez encore d'autres questions, n'hésitez pas à nous contacter et on essaie de vous donner quelques explications supplémentaires si c'est nécessaire.
Ok, très bien. Merci beaucoup. Merci pour votre intérêt, aux participants. N'hésitez pas à nous contacter, Jean-Marc et moi-même.
Oui.
L'adresse générique.
Merci à vous.
Sinon,
merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup.
Bonne journée.